Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Himalaya, Ghana, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Laura Lavoie. She's here to celebrate her beautiful and fun picture book. It's called Vampire's Vacation. Before we invite Laura into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Look Book, a great series of scavenger hunts books written by Barbara Tibbetts. The Look Book Scavenger Hunt book series is on a mission to make life and learning fun for the entire family. Scavenger hunts are a wonderful way to increase retention and enhance problem-solving skills. Looking for ways to connect with your children? Slow down and look at the ordinary things around you in a brand new way. The Look Book Scavenger Hunt is an open-ended activity to spark conversations with your kids. Your kids can take the lead in learning as they hunt for objects hidden in plain sight. Share this experience together and build connections that last a lifetime. The latest book in the Hometown series brings attention to the importance of caring for our natural world and can be completed anywhere. There are facts on each page about the item pictured to promote curiosity. This book can be a fun family outing or the center of a curriculum. The book can be completed as a family, a little at a time, or all at once. It fits easily into a purse or a backpack, and you're just going to love it. The Look Book Scavenger Hunt series by Barbara Tibbetts. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by My Brother Came Home with a Cone on His Head, the delightful picture book by Paul Warnke. A leg injury and visit to the doctor leads to a very scary time for one cute little dog who just wants to play with his brother. This is a charming story for young readers and their favorite furry friends. It's a beautiful story about loving and caring for animals, about friendship and love between brothers. Here's one of the many 5-star reviews the book has received on Amazon. Such a gorgeous little story. Both my children, ages 7 and 8, loved it. Loved the illustrations. And you and your family, you're going to love it too. My Brother Came Home with a Cone on His Head, a fantastic book that you will love adding to your family library. Join us right now from the beautiful state of New York. Our guest is here today to celebrate a brand new picture book. It's called Vampire's Vacation. Please welcome to this show, Laura Lavoie. Hey, Laura, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Laura and I was just sharing with Laura a vacation mishap I had many, many years ago. Vacations can be a lot of fun, but they can be stressful and things can happen. Tell us what happens on Vampire's Vacation.
Well, so the main character in the story, a little vampire named Fang, really isn't like the other vampires. He's really into doing different sorts of things. He wears brightly colored capes, and so he really wants to go to vacation at the beach. His family goes to Transylvania every year on vacation. They always do the same sorts of things, and the rest of his family is really enthusiastic about this, but Fang just really wants to snorkel and build sandcastles and go surfing. And so the story is really about him trying to convince his parents that they should do a different sort of trip this year that might be a little bit scary because they're vampires and, you know, we know what happens to vampires when they go out in the sunshine. So his parents are not super convinced that this is a good plan.
That's fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. I was never able to get my parents to go someplace I wanted them to go on vacation. They always made the decisions.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar experience when I was a kid, and that's part of what wound up being the inspiration for this story. We went to vacation in Maine a few times when I was a kid, and we went to beaches there. And it's funny now because as an adult, I do the same thing. I take my kids to Maine. It's beautiful, and we enjoy going every summer. But I just had this sort of similar thing idea in my head that I wanted to go to a beach with palm trees and that I wanted to surf in the Pacific Ocean. And so when I was about 16, I think, my mom and I took a trip to San Diego together, and we went in December. So it was warm for us there, living in upstate New York and going from snow to, 60-degree weather. But, for people that live in Southern California, it wasn't super warm. So there wasn't a lot of surfing happening and things like that. But we had a fantastic time. We visited, a lot of different beaches, and it was great. So I kind of had that same experience when I was a kid of, I really want to do this. Can we do this year instead? And then eventually we were able to do that.
I find it fascinating. You have to tell me how you do it. Now, I live in Boston, so I'm very familiar with the beaches in Maine. But 33 years ago, I married a beautiful woman originally from Puerto Rico. So I went for my first time to a beach with palm trees. And ever since then, the idea of jumping into the frigid waters off the coast of Maine, which never get up above 70 degrees, even on the hottest days, I can't fathom that. I can't believe that I actually used to go swimming in those beaches.
Yeah, so I personally don't really do a lot of swimming in that water. I'll usually go in about, knees, maybe mid-thighs, and that's about it. But and kind of same with my kids, they like to jump the waves, but they don't actually really swim. And they're big on, building sandcastles and doing those sorts of things too. But yeah, the water there is definitely chilly, and even in peak summer always feels like a bit of a shock when you first get into it.
It absolutely does. But Maine is a beautiful place to visit. And we live in a beautiful country. There's so many beautiful places. I mean, where you live in the world is a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, it really is. I was so fortunate to have grown up close to the Adirondacks, and I still live close by, but not quite as close to where I grew up. But so when I was a kid, we did things outside all the time, lots of camping, lots of hiking, trails and mountains. I've had some different nights when I was in high school where I went camping with some friends, and we slept in a lean-to on, next to a pond, and woke up to a sunrise over the water in the morning. And yeah, it's a gorgeous place. And that's probably why I've never left, because there's just so much, natural beauty here and opportunities to go kayaking and do all sorts of different things outside, which I personally, really enjoy, especially when the weather's nice, not so much when it's below zero in the winter.
Yeah. Now, you're sharing with us that you and your kids love to go, and your kids love to do the wave jumping. I'm assuming that they're young?
They are. I have two daughters. They're 4 and 6.
What do they think of their mom becoming a children's author?
So I think it finally clicked with my 6-year-old last week when she got to bring a copy of the book into her class. And her teacher read it out loud, and she said that her friends really enjoyed it, and the teacher sent me a lovely thank you note for sending in a signed copy. And so my 6-year-old was really excited about that. But for a long time, I've kind of joked that because I'm involved in the picture book community, I've really gotten to know a lot of authors. And so, it's a fairly frequent occurrence that we'll get, a signed book plate in the mail from another picture book author or something like that, or, that we'll be reading a bedtime story, and my 6-year-old can read now, which is fun. So she'll read the author's name on the cover, and, sometimes I'll make a comment about, oh yeah, that author's a friend of mine. So I think that for a long time, my kids thought that this is just something that everybody does because so many of mom's friends write books. I don't think that they really grasp that it's not just something that everybody does. But it's really fun. And actually my 6-year-old is kind of a bit of a budding author illustrator herself. She likes to write her own stories and illustrate them. I think she's up to 22 picture books that she has written and illustrated herself at this point. So she's quite prolific in terms of our family bedtime stories, and maybe she'll wind up being an author someday too.
There you go. There you go. Did you always dream of being a children's author?
Not children specifically, but I've always, similar to her, I've always written stories my whole life, and my mom jokes that she has just boxes of stories that I wrote as a kid on stapled together construction paper that I think are stashed in her attic or something. And so it's always something that I've done. And then as I got older, when I was in college and in graduate school, I kind of thought that I would write novels and do things like that. And then it was when I became pregnant with my older daughter, I started buying picture books to read to her and to have, and really realized that just how much I love children's literature, and was thinking back to the types of books that I used to read as a kid and how much I enjoyed them. And it really sparked this desire to sort of say to myself, maybe this is the writing direction for me, to get into writing for kids. And so I joined some groups where I could learn more about it and tried my hand at it. And it really clicked for me. That's kind of the best way that I can describe it. It felt sort of natural, whereas I struggle to write stuff that's longer. Writing novels always felt really challenging. And writing picture books is just pure joy for me. I love it so much. So this definitely is, kind of, I think, the long-term manifestation of a dream come true.
That's wonderful. Isn't it wonderful when you kind of figure out your sweet spot, what it is you like to do and what specifically about that area is really, really speaks to you?
Yeah, it's so great. And one of the things I love about picture books is that kind of the sky's the limit in terms of characters that you can create. You can have all of these imaginary worlds, you can have talking animals, and things like that are just so much fun. And for me, I love writing humor. There are some beautiful books and some authors that I admire so much that are lovely lyrical picture books or that just have a lot of heart in them. But for me personally, what I feel like I write well is humorous stories. I love making people laugh. And that's been one of the greatest joy for me, hearing about people reading Vampire Vacation, is when somebody will tell me I read it to my class and they were cracking up. That's what I'm going for, is to get kids giggling. So anytime I can do that, it's like mission accomplished.
Yeah. What was it that inspired you to write about a family of vampires?
Well, a couple of things. I've always sort of had this kind of interest in vampires. I read a lot of vampire stories myself growing up, particularly in middle school and high school. That was something that I was interested in. But where I initially got the idea from was another author, Jen Benton, had written a blog post about considering a character in a story having inherent conflict. And I thought that was a really interesting way to think about coming up with an idea for a book. So I started thinking about what's a character that if placed in a certain situation, it would sort of be an automatic problem. And there would be, some tension there and some potential for an interesting story. And I thought a vampire going to a beach, that could be a fun one. And then, from there it just really took off and kind of became this fun mix of, I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. I've always been very enthusiastic about it. So I've always enjoyed anything vampires, witches, ghosts, all that stuff is great from my perspective. So it gave this really fun opportunity to be able to write about vampires, but also to write about this sort of summer experience and this longing to go to the beach and longing to go surfing that I had as a kid. So it was a really fun idea to explore.
Yeah. Well, the next time you're on your way to Maine, you have to stop at Salem, Massachusetts and explore all the witch lore.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do that because we always kind of pass the signs to do the turnoff that we could go in that direction. And that's definitely something that I want to do someday, maybe when the kids are a little bit older and can maybe kind of appreciate some of that more. But that's definitely something that's on my list of stops that we have to make at some point and places we need to visit.
Yeah. No, Salem is a lot of fun. It's a little bit crazy around Halloween. The whole month of October is pretty insane, and it's pretty crowded for a little town. But there's always something to do, and there's lots of history and a lot of great museums there, too.
Yeah.
What's next for Laura Lavoie?
So next summer, I have another picture book coming out that's called Monster Baker. And it's with Roaring Brook Press, and it's illustrated by Vanessa Morales, who's just super similar to Micah Player, who illustrated Vampire Vacation. She does a lot of fun stuff with really bright colors, and really fun characters. So I'm so excited for it. I actually got to see some of the preliminary sketches last week and was just overjoyed looking at them. They're so amazing. So that story will come out next year, and it's about a little monster who has a really close relationship with her grandmother. And some of the things that they do together are they watch cooking shows on TV with this French pastry chef whose name is Pierre Dumonster, and they bake together a lot. And so when Grand Monster's birthday comes up, the little monster Tilly, who's the main character, decides that she wants to make her Grand Monster a birthday cake. And in the process of doing that, there are a lot of mishaps that happen as she tries to sort of navigate kind of classic baking mistakes, I guess, that people can make, like not measuring the ingredients properly or forgetting to turn the oven on or different things like that. So I'm really excited for that one to come out too. And then I have a couple more books on the way in 2024, but details of those aren't public yet, so I can't talk too much about those, but I'm excited to have more books on the way in the next couple of years.
That's awesome. The first time I tried to bake anything on my own or with my cousin, I read the instructions and it said 3/4 of a cup of water, but I thought it meant 3 or 4 cups of water. And so we had soup instead of cookies.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Tilly goes through in the story is some sort of misunderstandings with things or just rushing and not paying careful attention to what she's doing. And my hope for readers is that the results of that are funny, while also being able to empathize a bit with poor Tilly and everything she's going through to try to get this birthday cake right for this very special person in her life.
You mentioned that picture books are fun because you can really, there's no limits in terms of the characters that you can create and write about. Is there a character that you're thinking about for a future book perhaps that is so out there you're thinking, well, maybe there are limits that you can go in picture books?
Yeah, there have definitely been characters that I've considered before where I've thought, maybe that's not such a good idea. So when I was trying to think of a character that could be placed in a situation with some inherent conflict, one of the ideas that came to mind for me was a cell phone that wants to go swimming. But as I kind of thought about it, I was like, I don't know that a cell phone is the best picture book character. I also don't know that that would be super relatable to young kids. So maybe that's not the best idea. And I've written stories before that have food that kind of has a personality to it and different things like that. And there's definitely lots of great books out there, but I think to some extent too, it's all about how you execute your story, and some people can pull off some really fun and wacky concepts, and that's definitely something I'd love to explore more as I write more stories about kind of maybe trying to push some of those limits on a wacky picture book character.
Yeah. I agree that maybe this swimming cell phone isn't right for a picture book, but a graphic novel for teenagers?
That could be interesting.
Maybe. Hey, Laura, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Vampire's Vacation and find out more about you.
Yeah, so my website is lauralavoyauthor.com, and I have all the information for my books there. And then you can also find all the order links from all of your favorite bookstores if you go to the Penguin Random House website and type in Vampire Vacation. And if people want to find me on social media, it's L. Lavoy Author. So just L and then my last name and author. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram and love connecting with people there. So if anyone wants to connect on social media, I particularly have a good time on Twitter. I really like to joke around on there and kind of share funny stories of daily interactions with my kids who really, they have great senses of humor too and say some really funny things sometimes that make some great jokes. So I kind of joke that as my kids get older, if they don't have that sense of humor, nobody's going to find me funny anymore because I get a lot of my material from them because they're just so hilarious.
That's awesome. Well, we've had a really fun time speaking to the author of Vampire's Vacation, brand new picture book written by our friend Laura Lavoie. Hey, Laura, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been great. I've had a lot of fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be KB. She'll be here to celebrate our family vacation. It's a lot of fun. You don't want to miss it. Hey, authors, one thing that you don't want to miss is an opportunity to celebrate your book here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We can help you stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. Did you realize when you sat down to start writing your children's book that there are literally thousands of books published every single month? You probably didn't. I mean, when we started the Reading with Your Kids podcast, I had no idea that there were thousands of books published every single month, but there are, and it's really hard to stand out. But we can help you. You can be a guest here on the Read It With Your Kids podcast and tell the world about your book in a long-form conversation. It's fun, it's easy, it doesn't cost a thing. You gotta check it out. You can also submit your book to our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read panel, and if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools that can let parents know that your book is, well, it would be a great addition to your family library. And, of course, you can take part in our monthly promotion program. We can celebrate your book with commercials here on the podcast, with messages to our 90,000 plus social media followers on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards, and have your book displayed at one of our exciting live events. In July 2022, we'll be at the convention for the Association of Teacher Educators happening in Nashville, Tennessee. Imagine your book being on display in front of thousands of educators throughout the United States and internationally. Check it out today. Go to readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the author's Click Here button at the top of the page and scroll on down to find out how to be a guest, find out about our Certified Great Read program, and find out how you can have your book promoted here on the podcast. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Laura Lavoie. Please check out Vampire's Vacation. Also want to thank our sponsors, the Lookbook Scavenger Hunt series by Barbara Tibbetts, a really fun, totally interactive series that you'll just love. And also we want to thank Paul Warnke, the author of My Brother Came Home with a Cone on His Head. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Lori Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contouris, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.